Welcome back to another episode of Life's Ambition Podcast. Today we are joined by someone who has incredible drive for their career. She comes from the world of trust. Without further ado, Billie Porter. So Billie, how are things on your end today?
Things are great. I have a coworker that is working remotely up in Wisconsin where it is snowing. Here in Florida, it's going to be 80 degrees today, so I'm pretty excited for a nice Monday.
That's honestly just a get wrecked moment. My mom in Chicago, she sent me a photo of like her dogs, and one of them has this like full whiteout face from the snow, and it's brown because they have 20-mile-an-hour winds. I'm like, that must stink. Like I could be outside in North Carolina with short sleeves on.
Correct. My family is actually 3.5 hours west of your mom, so they're experiencing the same thing, and I don't miss it one bit.
Yeah, that's why you move to Florida or states like North Carolina, is to get away from it. And then it's just funny because you'll see people in 70-degree weather that are in like winter coats and everything. You're like, what?
Anything under 70 is sweater weather.
Really?
I've been down here 21 years, yes.
Yeah, that'll do it to you. But I mean, I'd love to kind of like dive into the episode today. Like, I really do appreciate you wanting to do this. And I'd love to start it off with you and really ask you, what does being a trust officer mean to you, and dealing with like people and their money-making capabilities, and how did you get into it?
So my best friend likes to joke as far as what a trust officer is or what they can do as a professional. She says it's easier just to say that I work for the CIA because it's just easier to explain than what on earth a trust officer actually does. And I don't blame her, because after 21 years of doing this, my mother can still not tell you exactly what my job is, because it is in fact unique to every family, and it changes throughout that family's relationship cycle with us.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, because I try to explain what I do to my parents or my grandparents, and they're like, "Oh, he's a math guy." I'm like, you know what? That's all you need to say. It's simple as enough. That totally works. But what does your career field entail? Because when I think of trust officer, I think of someone like a financial planner or something like along those lines.
You're very much in the ballpark, because I'm actually a certified financial planner, as one of the designations that is most recognized, with the lay people and the people that aren't in the industry. And I'm also a certified trust and fiduciary advisor as well, which is specifically aimed at trust administration or trust work. So a trust officer, in my mind, is essentially a master jigsaw puzzle person. You have expertise in so many different areas. I like to say I know enough to be dangerous, but that allows me to know when to bring in the experts in all of these fields. So a trust officer really does help someone understand where they are at financially at a minimum, and it can delve into several other areas, but also like financial planning is one of those areas, one of those pieces to the puzzle. So we could go down that whole route of what are your assets, what are your liabilities, more importantly, your cash flow, because budgeting is a 4-letter word to some people, but cash flow sounds a little nicer in figuring it out.
It is crazy just how foreign budgeting is to some people, because it's really not taught often in schools. Like, I don't remember, unless you took like a financial class in college that may have talked a little bit about it, no one is going up to you and saying, hey, like, are you planning X, Y, and Z? Like, with your salary for your job, are you planning like 20% of your income goes to like a saving of some sort, or opening a Roth IRA or something like that? And I was wondering, like, at what age do you think is good for people to start learning kind of these financial steps, or starting to think about, oh, how can I set myself up long term? Because I want to say like high school is a good range, but because that's when you kind of get your first job. But obviously you have a different story.
Yes. And that story starts with those who can't do teach it, because I actually made some very bad financial decision making along the way until I received the training, worked in the industry, I had 5-figure credit card debt because I just wanted to apply to every credit card they gave me in college, not understanding what that meant. At one point in time, I had 23 either Visa, MasterCard, or store cards sitting in a drawer.
23?
23 while I was in college.
Oh my goodness.
Because I did come from a family that is very hardworking, but not necessarily financially savvy or coming from a very wealthy place monetarily. So I do say high school is great, even middle school. Sooner or
Yeah.
later, I will be getting to a place where I can volunteer for junior achievement because that's really the only training I ever got. And that was one semester as a junior or senior in high school. They have either the teachers or people like myself come in and teach money management courses or just a
Yeah.
term or a block for in the schools. And they now have programs that go down into elementary.
Really, elementary school?
Mm-hmm.
And at like what level are you guys like teaching? Like elementary school, it might be, hey, this is money you do today compounds over time. And then in like middle school, it's, oh, let's try and create a budget sheet. Are you using more than what you're making? And then high school, it's a little bit more in depth than that. Like, is that kind of like the general sense of what's going on? Or
Yeah,
how do
and I
you
would even
teach
say,
financial literacy to like younger kids so they can relate to it? Because they're like,
Mhm.
oh, I mean, I'm just a kid. I might be with my parents for however much longer. I don't really need to worry about this stuff. Like, how do you make them care for it?
I don't know yet. I plan on figuring that out, but typically it's the Witham theory, what's in it for me? So, when you're thinking about young kids, it's okay, this many pennies means I can get this much. Like, what's that value of money would be my
Yeah.
thought when it's that young. But different people have different skills and even interests in being educated in financial literacy. When we're helping families, there's always typically in a couple, there's always one financial spouse and there's one non financial spouse. Because a lot of the times you balance each other out in your talents and interests.
Yeah.
So everybody comes to financial literacy either the hard way because they need to dig themselves out of a hole or proactively, which is definitely not the majority of the time.
Which is tough that it's usually one of those two scenarios. It's obviously very tough when it's the worst case where people are digging themselves out of a hole. And you mentioned that, growing up, your family was very hard workers, but kind of struggled in that financial sense. Is that kind of what drew you to this overall field? Because I know we had a call not too long ago where you talked about you were working from a very young age and have obviously just continued to work and started all these things on your own and really build yourself up.
Yes, I would definitely say that was it. We were more of actually just a little bit better than probably a paycheck to paycheck family. My dad worked in a factory for 30 plus years in a union in a small town in Iowa. So it was one of the better paying jobs in town, but it was still, maybe just a bit above, probably a decent amount above poverty, but not that far. My mother worked in a gas station for 29 years, the same gas station for 29 years. So super hardworking, but those aren't exactly the super lucrative jobs, which is
Mhm.
why I did start, as you mentioned, working at a very young age. And that age was 5 years old. And my sister was 8.
Oh
So
my goodness. Yeah.
on Sundays, there was no childcare available. So my mom would load us up in the powder blue Ford Escort station wagon, get us all laid back down and sleeping in the back. And she'd go open up the gas station at, I think it was 4 o'clock in the morning. And then when it got to a certain temperature in the car and light, you definitely are waking up. So my sister and I would make our way into the gas station. And, kids can't sit still long. So once we started getting a little rascally, they found some stuff for us to do. So anybody, any age can clean, front, face shelves. I'll find some odd jobs for us to do. So that's where it started.
Yeah. What did that do to your mentality over time? Because you started working at 5, it was every Sunday. Did you find a new appreciation for what your parents were doing for you guys and trying to provide? Was it like, wow, like I gotta when it's my turn to really get out there in the world, I'm going to get myself out of this cycle? Like, what did it do to your overall mentality over the years? Because obviously at 5 years old, things are new. It might be a game to you and cleaning and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd say by the time you're in middle school and high school, I know I got resilient to do yard work. I'm like, it's like 90 degrees outside. Why am I mowing the lawn right now? And like at 12 in the afternoon. So did you find any noticeable shift?
Absolutely, because I was told if I wanted something, I had to pay for it myself. So if I wanted any extras, if I wanted to, be one of those kids that had a beeper back in those days, I had to be able to buy the beeper and pay for the plan. So it did not only give me an appreciation for how hard my parents worked to support us, but it also drove me to want to do exactly what you said, and that was break the cycle. I was the first person in my extended family to go to a four-year university. I did have a couple of cousins that
Congrats.
started down the path with me for community college as well. But as far as the first 4-year degree, that was something I strived to do and achieved. So, I mean, I was in middle school already working 35 hours a week, trying to make
Wow.
sure we could break the cycle, have fun along the way, but also, just work hard and then you get rewarded.
What was your schedule like at that point? Was it wake up, maybe work a tiny bit, then go to school, and then go back to work? Or was it
All
do
after
school?
after school. So probably thinking maybe like a 4 to 6, 4 to 7, a kind of time frame. So after hours or after school,
Wow. Yeah. I mean,
and Saturdays and Sundays.
exactly. It's just so different to hear what people have gone through. I'm very fortunate where I got to play sports and do all these things growing up. I didn't have to work. Like, I started working when I got uh like a old 2004 Highlander car. So as soon as I got my license, it was like, all right, you're working, you're paying your gas and doing all these different things. So I was doing things on my own. But I can't imagine at a young age like yourself doing all that already and then just continuing to do so. So this work ethic has always been with you. Does it ever did you ever feel like you were missing out on anything at all? Or did you ever like look around and say, I'm getting ahead of this person. I know where I want to be.
I definitely felt like I missed out. I wanted to be the person playing sports. I wanted to be the person going to the trip to Washington D.C. with the what do they call that class back in the day? Oh, civil, no. Anyways, it was your government class. They would
Yeah.
take a trip to, New York or Chicago or whatnot. So I did feel like I was missing out, literally being from the other side of the tracks. But I also appreciated where I was at versus some of the things that I would hear them say and see them do that were that fortunate. They didn't always necessarily appreciate what they had. So it allowed me to recognize pros and cons to each situation.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And then lo and behold, you became a trust officer. Was there anything that came before that, or was it always out of school, starting this career path and moving forward?
So I didn't know what I wanted to do. So therefore, that is why I became a business major. And that's why, because you can do anything with business, no matter what you end up
Yeah.
doing. After the
There's
gas
nothing wrong with
station,
that either.
yeah, after the gas station, I worked retail through college, all 5 years, because I did do 3 years at community college for AA and NAS. Did not want to actually get in debt very much for education, did it anyways, went to 2 years of university and moved from Iowa 5 days later. This was back in 2004 when you could still talk to HR departments and hand somebody your resume or give them a call, which is a lot harder nowadays. And I feel for the younger generations trying to get past the scrubbing tools that they use for our Indeed applications and whatnot. So with that luck, I had actually interviewed on spring break here in Fort Myers, Florida, and was told, we'd love to have you, but let us know when you're down here. So when I did finally get down here 5 days after graduation, I went back to a couple of places that I had talked to, and a bank hired me. But I wanted to go straight into the really sexy role of being an investment advisor. I wanted to be a portfolio manager, trading stocks and bonds and mutual funds. And they said, well, you can't start there. You have to start somewhere else. Like, okay,
You're like,
well, I'm
bummer.
down here. What do you got open that will work? So I started as a commercial credit loan analyst in the same office with the wealth management team that I wanted to join. So I spread financials, so all the profit and loss, the income statements, balance sheets for businesses to see if they would qualify for commercial loans. So I was the person that did the boring behind the computer spreadsheet work, which you got to earn your stripes somehow. I was
Oh
happy to
yeah.
have a job, moved 1,800 miles on a hope and a prayer, and it worked out. So that was going on for approximately 9 months. And I was still like, man, this is not necessarily what I had in mind. What else is there out there? Still couldn't go the investment route. But that bank opened up a trust office in Fort Myers. And the person that they had open up that department on the west coast of Florida essentially belonged to the east coast of Florida, where everybody else was in her team. Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, Miami. So when she joined us, she really didn't know who to talk to for what, how to order supplies, where the lay of the land. So she had ended up asking me a couple of questions about things. We, got decently close. I was her go-to for anything she didn't know how to get or where to go or who to ask. And then one day she asked, do you know anybody that might want to be my assistant? And as she was asking these questions, we were getting to know each other. I heard her speak with her clients like they were family. All the hand holding, all the non-financial things she did for people, taking doctor's appointments on occasion, grabbing their mail, like all the stuff that you would do for your grandma or your parent.
Yeah.
And just the way they also treated her. It was like, you know what? I think that's what I want to do. So it was March 2005 when I started actually opening or answering the phone, in a trust department in Fort Myers, Florida, and got to learn from the ground up how to be a trust associate or assistant, all the way up to being a trust officer. 21 years later, still doing it, still loving it.
Wow. I mean, that's quite the story there. I mean, congrats to you, obviously being a first generation student at a university. That's already impressive in itself, but making your way all the way up to here. I love to talk to you about when you're in these huge career fields like business and you're getting your entry level job. How do you convince people that you have to do the grunt work before you get to maybe the more exciting or where you want to be? Because I find that to be very tough, where the stereotype of my generation is they want things now and it has to be immediately in front of them. What was some of your mentalities that you had, or even the thought processes of, I have to start here to make it to here?
So good questions. And I've recently been in the role of hiring a couple of people. And I also trained a younger person in my last job before moving on. So trying to help them understand, I'm going to call it the grunt work, earning your stripes, the boring, monotonous stuff. In our world, it would be like entering cash, doing transfers, getting the forms to do that, and also getting them uploaded into the system or imaged in.
Yeah.
To move on, you have to know how everything works. You need to build the foundation of your knowledge before you can go jump into the fun, sexy things, like hosting clients for dinner, taking them to the plays, meeting their kids for the first time and helping the next generation. You have to understand those things first. And that's why I valued my career path of starting from ground zero, working for firms that believed in education to expand my technical knowledge, but also my soft skills, working up through, into those more client facing roles. So what I would say is to the younger generation that's out there interviewing and to the people interviewing them is to be honest with yourself about what you like, what you don't like. Have the person who's doing the interviewing be completely honest. Yes, you are going to be doing scanning and transactions for the better part of 2 years before we are able to help build on your knowledge, because I have a firm belief you have to be in your job 2 years before you really know it and you're adding value and not still learning. So the other part I think is on the hiring company as a whole is development. Everybody preaches that they want their younger generation to be mentored, to keep them engaged. But then everybody is so busy with their day to day, they forget to keep ushering those learning opportunities, those skill set development exercises, bonus assignments that aren't necessarily in their normal day to day. So the hiring generation needs to remember that it will be monotonous, but we need to make sure there's a carrot out there that will engage and enhance that person's knowledge and experience to put up with the mundane day to day. But I would also say the younger generation needs to be honest with themselves and their employer or potential employer about, what, I'm bored, I'm getting disengaged. One great example, I had a wonderful, bright trust associate that we brought over from the banking side. Banking, there's a lot to it, but she didn't have any knowledge in the trust area, so she had to do these monotonous things. And then all of a sudden she started making silly mistakes. I knew she was more than capable, but she was bored and disengaged. My senior associate, that actually was older than myself, didn't want to give her any new work or any new things to learn until she stopped making mistakes. Well, that didn't work because she was disengaged and didn't do a good job because she was not paying attention. As soon as we gave her the next thing to learn, she stopped making silly mistakes because she was refreshed and engaged again.
Yeah, and that's a really good take on things too, of continuously developing like both technical and soft skills, like doing those extra little bits, like those bonus actions that you talked about, and working with the hiring people of, hey, like, give them tasks gradually, like as soon as they really start to develop their one skill, because there is that kind of like fade out piece. I'm not sure the correct word to use for it, but or like when you have a monotonous task that you're doing over and over again, you're not going to be operating at your full efficiency that you can do. I know that sometimes, like when I'm making a map and it's the same exact thing over and over again, I might just be doing it a little bit slower than when I could, because I'm like, oh, I've done this 1,000 times, however many times. And so getting those new tasks, like, all right, I'm chat GPTing, like, okay, I have this error that came up. What do I do here? And I'm working on it like way into the night or even into the morning. So I totally get that. And I love to kind of go a little bit ahead of talking about people with trust funds. Like, what is a trust itself? How do they work? And when you're talking with clients, what is that like? Like, how do people find you? Is it just they find the company and they're like, oh, we want to set a trust fund up for our kids, so let's meet with whoever and get dinner or something like that? Like, how does it all work?
Sure. So a lot of the conversation starts with the attorneys that draft the documents. We have a lot of hits on our website and inquiries on our website. Oh, I need a trust. So it's a very big misconception that a trust company actually drafts the documents as well. Whereas a trust company or a brokerage firm, we actually manage the funds for the individuals that are building the wealth or the trusts that are created. So many times a client will move to Florida from somewhere else, just like myself, and they will need a new estate plan. And that usually can incorporate a trust, not always. But for the people that are moving here, many times they have the wealth that does typically lend to having a trust. And there's non-wealth reasons, but we'll leave those for another day. So an estate plan includes documents around decision making while you're here. You can't make your own decisions, whether in healthcare or in finances. What happens to your stuff when you're no longer here, which would be your will. And a trust spans incapacity, when you can't make your own decisions, and after you're gone. So a trust has different stages of life. So if we've got Drew's revocable trust, that means, Drew, it's your trust. You can make any changes. You have full control. Many times you're the one coming to me as the client because you have kids and grandchildren that you want to make sure the money is in trust, professionally managed, properly creditor protected from all the lawsuits and crazy people out there that are suing everybody for anything. And it also protects against divorce. So there's different reasons as to whether or not a trust is a fit for everybody. But when it is, you also want to make sure you've named people in the trust that are going to do the job right. And someone like yourself, for example, you all don't necessarily know how to be a trustee. You can do it. It can be learned, but it's a lot. So the trust company can be a corporate fiduciary with a family member or the family to help them make sure they're doing it right. And one portion of that is investing the money properly. And investing as a trustee for a set of beneficiaries or people that receive the money is different than you or I investing our own funds. Very different, held to a much higher standard as a trustee.
Interesting. Okay. Because I didn't know if what you're investing right now, then you just set up a trust later on, but you're still funding whatever into your savings or something like that.
So,
but the trust sounds different than what you're investing.
Yes and no. So
Okay.
we've got Billie Porter, the person. I've got a 401k. I've got an old IRA, or an old 401k that is an IRA. I've got an investment account. In my case, I don't have children, so maybe my trust goes to my nephew, for example. But I've got my plan. I'm investing my own money. We help those kind of people as well. But a trust that's established has stages. Drew's trust, Drew's driving his own bus here and now. After Drew is no longer with us, there's usually an estate settlement phase. And then whenever or whatever the document says, then Drew wants these checks to be cut to these charities and the rest of the money held in trust, one trust for each, his son and his daughter. Who's going to do the job of estate settlement and who's going to continue on and be the trustee of the trust, both investing but also administering correctly. So I am part of a multi-legged stool or team for client services, and I'm on the administration, the planning, the jigsaw puzzle side. And my counterpart, who most clients want to talk to more because it's fun, is the investment professional or the portfolio manager. And there's other people on the team, but those are the two main client-facing roles. And it's much easier to explain, how investing money works versus everything else a trust officer can do for the family along the way.
Yeah, and thank you for describing that, because I have zero idea of what goes on, because have a financial advisor. Obviously that's part of the trust, but it's not the full picture. And so it's really interesting hearing you talk about the different aspects of all of it. Like, how early can someone set one of these up? Or how early do you recommend someone setting these up?
It's all about family dynamics. Anyone over the age of 18 should have a will, the power of attorney, which is for financial decision making, and the healthcare power of attorney for healthcare decisions. Anybody over the age of 18 should have that. Because a lot of my clients, they're the parents and grandparents, and when you go off to college, they can no longer speak for you because you are an adult. So everybody listening to this should have those documents in place. And many times you can go to your parents' attorney and ask them to help you. Now, a trust can be set up for many reasons. It's not just financial because you've got $5 million or you're the person in Arkansas that just won Powerball. For example, I've got one client who has been on Medicaid for their last, probably 20 years. If she ever gets any money in her name, State's going to take it. So
Wow.
therefore, the husband set up the trust so that when he passes, all the life insurance money goes into the trust. The trustee takes care of that person, but that person doesn't get all the money in their pocket to do what they want. A trust puts rules around a bucket of money that allows it to be creditor protected, divorce, lawsuit, allows it to be professionally managed. Even if that person names an individual to be a trustee, they can still hire an investment advisor like ourselves to invest the money for them, and they just handle all the administrative stuff. We help out along the way, of course, but it's not just because you're uber wealthy that a trust would make sense. And that's why I always try to help my clients talk through family dynamics. And I make a recommendation from a administrative reality point of view.
Yeah.
An attorney may have a different legal opinion.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, let's say someone has a life insurance policy, and if they pass away, it's $100,000 or whatever it is, but it's in a trust fund, and there's rules and parameters that are set with it. It wouldn't, the 100,000 wouldn't just go directly to the person. It might be like, oh, you can take out X% a year, and that would go to whoever, and then there would be, and then let's say that person passes, like their significant other. Would there be additional trustees also in that trust to go to like the next person? Or what happens when there is no next designated person? Does it just go to the state? What happens then?
2 points remind me to circle back to younger people and being a trust beneficiary.
Okay.
Typically, there is a rule for everything in a trust document because you have to account for whatever might happen. So most of these trust documents are 60 to 80 pages long.
Holy
And,
cow.
and when my clients are reading it or we're going through the exercise with the attorney, they're like, I don't need that in there. That's not for me. I don't have a small business we have to worry about. Well, your children might, your grandchildren might. So a trust does have to provide for all eventualities in it.
Okay.
And if it, many times it's a bucket of money that really truly only lasts through generation 3 from the person who made it, because that person wants the funds to be used. You know, want the kids and the grandkids to use the funds for the rules they put in the document.
Yeah.
My favorite example is the trusts are there to support your life, not enhance it. So if you're driving a Toyota Corolla, you're not going to get a Lamborghini.
Oh.
I know. I get that reaction all the time. So it does provide if the money passes away and if it's in trust for me until age 40, but I pass and I have no kids, usually it will go to what's called heirs at law, but essentially back up the family tree and then back down. You hope that doesn't happen. There's usually typically very good planning for 3 generations. More often than not, though, the money is used for good reason, and it gets down to an amount in Florida of $50,000, where they call it an uneconomical. Now, the trustee is just collecting a fee, and that money is not really benefiting the beneficiary or the person to use the money. So there's ways to actually terminate small trusts as well.
And then what did you say about like younger advisees going into it?
So the younger generation doesn't always know or typically know that grandma and grandpa have provided for them in their estate plan, because it is taboo to talk about this. Still, that the grandparent generation, it's starting to get a little bit more normalized, and our parents' level, it's a lot more normalized because you should be planning in a very intelligent way. So in a trust, there's typically language that says, if I pass away and I've got 3 kids, if I do nothing, then the trust will just split out 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 for each of my children, according to the rules. I'm oversimplifying this. But it also can say, me as the person that's the top generation wants to change that flow amongst my kids. I can, because child 1 did win the lottery. They don't need it, so let me just take care of child 2 and 3. Well, great. However, if you're a very successful geospatial data scientist and you already have many, many, many zeros behind your name, you may not want that to come to you. You may not want that money outright. You might want it in trust for your kids because you don't need it. So
So
I
even
don't know
like
how
the
to solve the
future
problem.
generations
Hmm?
can change. Sorry, so even future generations, like if my parents put whatever and said you could use this, even I could say no, I don't want it, and then that can. Okay, so everyone kind of has a say at a certain point to it.
To a point. That's why it's hard to talk about what a trust officer does. You first look
Yeah.
for the document and the rules that the person who made it put in place. Then there's an entire, and I know this is a podcast, but there's an entire 3-inch book behind me for the trust laws and statutes. Each state has it. And then there's always discretion. As a trustee, if you're coming to me saying, I want a Ferrari because you've actually worked hard enough, you're no longer driving a Corolla, you are driving a Ferrari. You can raise your status in life. Well, then discretion based on facts and circumstances of that time period when that beneficiary is asking what they're asking. So that gray area can drive people nuts, whether it's me trying to help
Gotcha.
you understand what you're entitled to, or you trying to understand what you can even ask for.
Does that make it exciting though, working in this field? Because there is that gray space to kind of work in and figure out the minutia of what people want, how how do their kids get affected by it? Oh, do their kids become significantly wealthy themselves so where it doesn't really matter that much?
It's exciting, but most of the time it's headbutting and trying to help a generation, most recently a generation that got to see a statement for $100 million, and they can't really ask for any of it because they don't get it yet. Their parents benefit from it for right now, but in trust world, you have to give statements to those that can use the money now and those that would get it next, even if they have
Yeah.
no ability to ask for it. So a majority of the time, unfortunately, is spent around education that takes time. And when you're talking about financial literacy earlier and understanding finances, how they work, etc., I would also say the same thing. The more your parents can help you understand their estate plan and how it may or may not benefit you. I've got clients that tell their kids, I'm bouncing the last check, you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
But they're being clear with their kids about what they will or will not get. So it's more often the education, and the earlier I can get my clients to introduce me to their kids and grandkids, the more I can build trust before I have to say, oh, by the way, you don't get a check outright. You're going to get it in trust. And
Yeah.
there's really good reasons for it.
Oh yeah, because with some of the planning that I see some people do where they're like, yep, I got $600 this month. I'm going to use all $600 on like a new Xbox or something like that. And it's just like, well, this is why we have these things in place then to not give it all to you at once. And I'm not sure if you can give an example at all, but you did mention earlier that each states have their own trust laws bound into it. So can you give me like an example of like a difference between, like, let's just say like it's California and New York, or if there's better examples that you can use, or like Florida and New York or something like that. Um, what would be like a big difference between the two of them? And then how does that impact people moving around? So let's say my parents are in Illinois and I'm in North Carolina. Let's say they have something set up. So they're in Illinois and then it comes to me in North Carolina. Does it get set up differently than for like my kids? If that makes sense.
It does. I've got a couple of examples I can give you. Illinois is a really good one. I'm working with a family that I will be flying to see in February in Chicago.
Cool.
Um,
Cool. It'll be a
but
little cold then.
yeah, there are a handful of states that still have what's called an estate tax, where if you have some over the limit of money, you have to pay the state of Illinois an amount. I'm going to keep it high level. So
Yeah.
this person wants to make sure that he is given away or put money in trust, so much so that his net worth is less than $4 million. Because you can make trust during life as well. You don't have to have it just establish itself when you're no longer here. So he wants to,
Interesting.
yep, he wants to gift or get that number down so that he doesn't have to worry about paying the state of Illinois and all of its fiscal glory at this point in time. So now their estate plan, though, in Illinois is set up under Illinois law for you, even though technically you're a North Carolina resident.
Gotcha.
If I've got a trustee who lives in California, the whole trust is taxed because my trustee lives in California that I'm working with. So states can
Oh,
get their fair share. I don't know if I call it fair actually, depending on what state you live in. I think Kentucky is the same way. But one of the examples I love to use, my old firm, we would do these presentations called beneficiary war stories and how this planning actually goes wrong sometimes. And one of the examples we would use and the differences between states and why it's important to get an estate plan for you whenever you move to a new state, get that new estate plan updated in the state where you are a resident. Missouri. Missouri is very fun. So in Missouri, if I say, we'll go back to the three child example that I said earlier, instead of setting up 1/3 for each child, I've got one child that's really a ne'er-do-well daughter, and I know they're going to waste it, but I want to give her something. So I give her 10% of my overall net worth. We're going to say in trust. And the other 90% is split between the other two kids. So 45, 45, 10. In Missouri, if that child who's only getting 10% brings a lawsuit or formally files an objection to what I gave that person, that child, they're automatically disinherited.
oh,
So
holy cow.
now that law does not exist in Florida, but I do have some Florida attorneys where I see them drafted in there anyways, just as a tool, even though it's not applicable here. You know, people, laypersons reading that would say, "Oh gosh, oh no, okay." Well, it's not enforceable in Florida.
Hmm. That's just crazy how states can differ like that. And then does it matter if the trust comes to me and like if my parents in Illinois, trust comes to me in North Carolina? Does it change after that if my kids stay here because it was formally introduced in Illinois or started there?
Stays in a state where it was originated when it became unchangeable or what we call irrevocable. So if your parents put together a trust that takes care of you and your kids during life, which is very standard, because obviously private school for kids is very expensive. So if you're the only one supported by the trust, it's just not smart. So if you and your children are supported by this trust and then you pass on and there's one trust for your daughter, one trust for your son, it's still grandma and grandpa's document from Illinois.
Gotcha.
Now, whoever was managing the money, like the trust company, can continue with them and manage the money and help with the tax returns and everything else that comes with being a trustee. But there's also typically language in trust documents where if your kids are in North Carolina, they have no relationship with the fiduciary that's taking care of. Trustee, fiduciary is interchangeable. There's usually flexibility in the documents for you to be able to remove the trustee that's acting and appoint someone else.
Yeah, and thank you for going through all that. I mean, just seems so complicated how it all works. So, and it's completely different than, let's say, because I've talked with financial planners in the past. So there's just this added level to it. And I appreciate you kind of going through it. And I was wondering if you could talk at all about some common mistakes that people might make in setting up a trust. I know it involves both a legal team and like the trustee foundation or company that you're working with. But are there any mistakes that people get into or go into like these kind of meetings when they are client facing? Like, oh, I want to do this. Well, that might run into like these taxes or something along those lines.
Yes. Which one should I talk about? Because there's plenty.
Doesn't make me feel good that there's plenty.
We'll start with this one, with this example. Being too restrictive, I would say, is one thing that that comes out of a trust document that isn't necessarily good, even though it's well intentioned. because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. We were supposed to have flying cars by now. So, being too restrictive and your grandchildren 60 years later and what they may need should be something the trustee can make a decision on and have discretion, that gray word again, discretion on facts and circumstances at that time to help best carry out the person's wishes who made the trust. We call that the grantor or the trustor. So if I know that, and that's through getting to know grandma and grandpa, if I know that they wanted to make sure that, again, your life was supported and not enhanced, then great. But if I knew they definitely wanted you to take a trip out of the country once a year to enhance your cultural experience and your worldliness, like that's over and above what is kind of the standard. So being too restrictive is a mistake that I see a lot. Many attorneys will say, limited, include these things, but not limited to helping to pay for a wedding, which I do not like. Travel,
Why is
family
that?
trips. The wedding part?
Yeah.
Statistically, people who get married, 52% of the time, they get divorced. And that's not even going into the statistics of people that are married more than once.
Yeah.
So for a whole nother session, but when you start using trust funds to help with joint expenses or obligations like a mortgage, that softens or lessens the ability to protect that money from divorce.
Gotcha.
So I wouldn't call it a mistake, but every once in a while people will put a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law in their plan. Most estate plans follow the bloodline, and it's not because we don't like the son or daughter-in-law. It's just you want your money to continue on for your bloodline and your family. I have one person who needs to rush back to her attorney because unfortunately she just lost her husband unexpectedly, and the daughter had a very long time husband. Well, they're getting divorced right now. So since they're divorcing, that person really doesn't want the son-in-law in the document anymore. And the document could have been drafted a little bit better, saying, if my daughter is living with this person and married to them, then he gets X. It's not drafted like that. So while she's grieving and her daughter's going through a horrible situation, she has to go call an attorney and
Yeah,
get it
which
taken care of.
sucks. No one ever wants to do that.
Nope.
And I'm sorry for that person. That's really tough to hear.
It is, and that person is one of my colleague would say they're in the runnings for like number one client because they're so nice and easy to work with. And I would just say the other mistake that people make, and I would expand this to most likely even people listening to this broadcast, is inaction. They just don't get it done. Or they're trying to make sure they do it so right and so well that I've got another client that hasn't finished their estate plan updates in a year and a half because they want it to be perfect. And until I reminded them that if something were to happen to you today, this is what happens to your money. Then they were like, oh, crap, I don't want that to happen. So then that gives them some urgency because they wanted it to be perfect. This is an engineering type kind of person where they want to think of every single possible outcome and make a solution for it. And
that makes sense.
Sorry. They want to make sure it's all perfect, but if the train hits them tomorrow, their wishes are not going to be carried out the way they want them to.
Yeah.
So inaction, they're just not getting it done.
It's just such a complex world that you're dealing with. And I guess I kind of wanted to leave you off with like one question here is, for people getting into the field, I guess I'll leave you off with two questions. For people going into the field, what would you recommend for them to get ahead of the game? Maybe like, they're only doing grunt work for a year versus the 2 years. And then the last question is, what makes you come back to work every day? Because you said it was a headbutting conversation or headbutting career field. What makes you come back? So I wanted to leave you with those two questions.
So, all right. Question number one, getting into the field. I would also relate these back to my comments earlier with the interviewing process and standing out from other candidates. It's being proactive, not waiting for your employer to go and pay for something for you to get it done, like a designation, like the certified financial planner designation. it's a lot of work. So you need to make sure you're looking into whatever it is you want to do. So I would say, and I believe they're actually having some students sit for that in the 4-year schools now. So certified financial planner designation is great. You've seen some of the campaigns on TV. They're doing a good job of getting it out there that this credential means this person has a certain knowledge base. They've gone through background checks, etc. I don't know if you saw the one where they said, "Oh yeah, I'd work with this guy. He's all clean cut and in a suit," and then it turns out he's a DJ because they didn't do any due diligence. So I would say, being to get into this field or in the financial area, being proactive of getting your own credentials, getting out there, making connections. A lot of the communities have what's called SCORE, which is a group of retirees. So SCORE.
Yeah, talked to some SCORE people before. Yes.
That's a really good way to make connections, just to understand and enhance your learning and meet people who know people that might be looking to hire. And I would also say, let's see. Yeah, just know as many people as you can and try to make a personal connection with them. If you remember to ask about their dog surgery the next time you see them, great. Or if you're sending them the note, hope the surgery went well. Handwritten notes are kind of a thing of the past, but they still make a huge impact nowadays. Or a thank you note email after an interview. We interviewed several people recently. Only one sent a thank you email to everybody. Appreciate your time.
Someone I know that just got their job, they mentioned to them that they were one of the only candidates that sent them a thank you email, which blows my mind.
Yeah, I don't get it. So, and you're going to have to remind me of the second part of that question that you asked me.
Yeah, all good. What makes you come back to work every day in such a head-butting career that you were talking about? Or I shouldn't say such a head-butting, but you definitely said there is head-butting aspects to it. What makes you come
dynamics is the phrase I typically use as far as how things work many times. I would say it's for those times when the headbutting becomes a breakthrough for the families that you help and they finally realize the value that you're adding to the team, because a lot of people come to the trust company wanting to talk to the investment person. They wonder why I'm sitting at the table. And that's just because I listen and watch for ways to add value. So when that client calls us for a recommendation that has nothing to do with financial services, that's what makes my day. That's what makes me keep coming back, because we have earned their trust.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's awesome. Well, Billie, I really do appreciate you joining the episode today. And I hope you have a good trip to Chicago in February. It's obviously going to be very exciting. So thank you again.
Thanks, Drew.
Hey, everyone. Want to take a quick second and say thank you to whoever listened to the episode today. I really do appreciate it, and it means a lot. If you did like the episode, make sure to give it a like or 5-star rating depending on what platform you are listening to. And if you really want to support the show, check out our website or Patreon link below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next episode.